But I'm always excited when I see that lives change when they become a part of this community and of this community of faith. And we see it when strangers or newcomers come amongst us, and sometimes they come with a little suspicion, wondering what it is that Metropolitan Community Church does. I was interested yesterday when we were putting up the illumination in the fellowship hall. And one of the workers was a little surprised because our logo doesn't contain a cross. And he said to us, what kind of church is this? And that was a wonderful opportunity to share with him what kind of church this is. It's a church of one people, one church. That we come from so many different backgrounds and so many places, and we come into what we would probably define as this melting pot that we call Metropolitan Community Church. And the melting pot that comes from so many different places. You know, Reverend Troy Perry came from a Pentecostal background. And yet this morning in our liturgical worship, you probably wouldn't know that that is the roots in which we have come from. One of the great things that Reverend Troy did when he founded this denomination was he made it ecumenical. He ensured that people from all backgrounds were able to come under this global umbrella that we call Metropolitan Community Church. One church, one people. Whether we worship at 9 or 11 or at 1:30, whether we worship in English or in Spanish, whether we worship in whatever tongue it is that we bring to this place, we are still one church and one people. And I don't know about you, but that excites me. That we can truly be this one church and this one body. And how exciting this morning that Reverend Alex is able to translate immediately into Spanish, into Mexican, into that language that is a part of this one church and this one people. I'm excited about who we are as the body of Christ. And I'm excited because it is just as God has ordained for this church to be. It is just what God wanted us to be as the body of Christ. And when we try to be anything different than that, we go counter what I believe that God has called us to be, with intention of being that one church and that one body. I believe that we go against what God has called us to be when we don't respect the fact that we are one church and we are one body, that we are the body of Christ alive in this place this morning. And I'm excited for our future. As I said in our announcements, you imagine what it will be like in maybe a few years' time when we look around and we see not only a 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock and a 1:30 service, but perhaps we see a 4 o'clock in the afternoon that's in, in Filipino, or perhaps we have a 5 o'clock on a Saturday evening service in Korean. Just imagine what this church is going to look like. Oh no. And just think of all the challenges that we will have to face as we grow this church together with our different cultures and our different languages and our different expectations. I want to say something this morning that one of the things that we need to let go of as we build metropolitan community churches in this next generation is that we need to let go of the church of our tradition. You know, one of the problems that we've existed in MCC for so long is that everybody who comes in wants the church to be just like the church that they came from, but rather that they're accepted into the body of Christ. And I want to tell you, sisters and brothers, I want to tell you truthfully, it's time for us to let that go. Because Metropolitan Community Church is a new church. It's not a church of our tradition. It's not a church of our heritage. It's not even the church of our parents. It's our church. Metropolitan Community Church is an experiment of something new, and we defeat the presence of the Spirit when we try to make it what we came from, but only that we came from that we've now been accepted into the body of Christ. It's time for us to create a new thing and to find out where the members of the body of Christ fit in this new piece that we call Metropolitan Community Church. That means that we'll have to try out and try on new things. What does it feel like for those of us who perhaps were used to kneeling at the altar to stand at the altar with upraised hands? And what does it feel like for those of us who came from a tradition where you picked up snakes? come to worship where you have a liturgical influence and a liturgical background? What does it feel like for a congregation when we are truly ready to experiment with something new and with something exciting? And for those of us who came from a tradition where we were told that anything around statues and images is of the devil, to come into a church where we see Our Lady of Guadalupe and the Black Christ and people who are doing all sorts of different things, and yet they are of the one body, the one church, the one people of God. How exciting it is this day that we come together to share worship together. That some of the folks who are used to a more contemporary worship at 11 o'clock have stepped out of their comfort zone and have come to 9 o'clock just to see what we do in this crazy hour of the day. And how exciting that some of the folks who traditionally would go to a 9 o'clock or an 11 o'clock service will go to a 1:30 service and will get a whole different feel of an understanding of what culture and what language and what experience it can be. And how brave for our choir this morning and for our worship leaders to make a commitment present at all 3 worship services today. One of our choir members said, "I'm ready for the marathon today." I said to them, "Welcome to my world." One church, one people. That's what we've been called to be. And to allow that sense of the holy to be present in whatever we do, in whatever time, in whatever culture, and whatever experience. I want to tell you, since I've been with Metropolitan Community Churches, my life and faith has been stretched. My experience of God has been stretched. It's so different from the place that I came from. And yet in all of that, I've learned to let go of the traditions and the things that I expect church to be. And in letting go of those, to be ready and open to receive something new and something fresh and something exciting. Just as the body of Christ has been called into different places and to different times, so Metropolitan Community Church has been called into different places and different times.